Hey, I'm Carl DeGregorio. I am here at my desk with something called Carl D's Desk Sessions. I am starting a new project, and I've never really chronicled the process for myself or for anybody else. So I'm just throwing my laptop up, putting the light on, plugging in the mic, and seeing if any of this stuff's helpful or helpful to me just to say it out loud and to edify my process. To date, I have my bio would be I'm an actor, comedian, and a writer, playwright, and that's where I'm at with that. And now I am attempting and giving myself the pressure of saying out loud. I have now completed a draft of a one-man show, which is essentially my way of using the skills I developed on stage as a stand-up comic, on stage as an actor, and at the desk as a writer, trying to combine them all, and not limiting the genre to stand-up, which is a hard and brutal and challenging art form, but it is primarily for the laugh. Primarily, and beyond primarily, it's the existence of the art form is to make laughs. And theater, as it were, or where I want to go with my one-man show, is primarily to do plenty of laughter, because you'd be stupid to leave those skills aside. You'd be stupid not to include more laughs in drama. That's always been my contention, is that dramas need more laughs and comedies need more pathos or drama. And so with the one-man show, I'm just taking the pressure off having to get laughs per minute. And I'm trying to tell a narrative arc, and I'm trying to also pull the heartstrings, so have them laughing and crying, which is not the said purpose of stand-up. So I've had over the years problems in the idea of a one-man show, because as a drama nerd, I also have a theater degree and studied, tragedy, comedy, the Greeks and Ibsen and Shakespeare and Chekhov and all that stuff. And seldom do we delve into the idea of a solo performance, because drama as a vehicle, it's very hard to accomplish with one person standing there. And so what they wind up becoming is showcases for actors to sort of present monologues that show them as versatile. And while that is worked for many and some and none too, that's not my purpose. I don't intend to do a lot of character stuff where it's like Spoon River Anthology and I'm playing all the parts, or Mark Twain, where I dress like Mark Twain, like Hal Holbrook used to do. It's obviously characters will emerge if you're telling a story, and I guess I'll figure that out as I start to workshop, which is the next phase. I have written a draft. I know I'm old school. I have written a draft. I use Word for this project, although Final Draft is perfectly fine. But even if I'm writing a script, which I have done a play, like I said, in New York, and we've all got our spec scripts in the drawer. Even if I write them and edit them and ultimately use a digital copy, how I define my first draft is I finish the first draft as far as I can see on the digital page, and I print it. And then I go to Staples and I get a binder, and I get a 3-hole punch or 3-hole punch paper, and I put it in the binder, and then I break out my Goldwing pencils, or Blackwing. Is it Blackwing? Yeah, Blackwing. These are real light. There's different ones, but this is the kind that's really soft lead. And I know that I think Hemingway used these, and Stephen Sondheim was a big fan of these. A lot of writers use these because they write smoothly, and it's just a tactile, fun process to get your first draft then and do your rewrites, I do them longhand. So what I do is I print it and then I start laying out the pages. And then I start doing the work of fixing it, because the first draft obviously is just the beginning. And I start doing what you could do in Word, but I do it manually. So that when this part is done, this sort of rewriting, I don't know if you can see all this, you can use the back of the page, the blank page of the script for inserts and places where you're rewriting or adding. And I take it through that process. I don't know if you can tell, I also have highlights. After the first draft, after the vomit draft, Stephen King in his book on writing talks about that the first draft is a sprint. And he really helped me out with that, because a long time ago, I would have these 40-page starts, 6-month layoffs, and then get back to it. And then it would be a disjointed thing that lived in 2 different time periods. So I think the note that it's a sprint to the first draft is so it's at least cohesive and you wrote what you thought you wanted to write about in that first thing. And then where the real craft comes is in the rewrite anyway. So I've taken that advice to make the first draft a sprint. I don't know, this is probably just a good drama technique, especially if you're writing drama, that thing should have a beginning, middle, and an end. And one way to check that, in my estimation, is if you check, I have highlights of the first and last page, the first and last line of each section, especially with the one-man show. I'm thinking of it in sectional form. How you start and how you finish, right? That's what I did with my book too, how a chapter starts and how a chapter ends. And my theory is, or whatever, I'm sure it's osmosis from somewhere else, but that first line and that last line should have a distance between it, meaning that the words in between the first and last lines are the story and are the middle of the beginning, middle, and end. And if your first line is, I woke up, and then the last line is still trying to wake up, there may be a hint that that section needs a little looking at. And that's where you can then start to do your cuts if you don't have a vivid open and a vivid close. And then sometimes what I do, and I have also this is an old tried and true technique of using the cards. So you do titles for each chapter or section or act or scene if it were a screenplay. And then if there aren't 3 events, 3 things or more happening, then that's another indicator that there's not enough going on in that section and it's worthy of a deletion sometimes. I can also do the first and last line thing on the cards, and then when I lay it out on the floor, on the board, or I whiteboard it or whatever, seeing those first lines and those last lines, and then seeing the cards, and then seeing a puppeteer's overview of this story in sort of a quadrant rather than just page after page after page of rambling, you can start to see, are things interwoven enough that you could move stuff around, especially if you're not doing a linear story. Can you move stuff around and it still makes sense? Can you take stuff out and it picks up? And then maybe you have to change a first line, or do you bring a memory of the first section into the ending of the first section into the beginning of another? And so with this process of writing manual first drafts, cutting, scribbling, doodling, highlighting, using the binder, because then it helps me because I'm not going to check social media in a binder because I'm on paper. I'm in the real tactile world. I'm not doing this out of any hipsterish notion of let's go back to vinyl, or any hipsterish notion of using a typewriter instead of a word processor. I've always thought that if Hemingway had Microsoft Word, he'd fucking use it, but he didn't. So, and maybe not Hemingway. I don't know enough about the lives of these people, but I know that a lot of our great writers today are not inauthentic because they use word processors. The only issue for using a computer is that sometimes you can open an app that'll distract you. And Larry Gelbart, I think a long time ago, said his first word of advice for anybody writing is to disinstall Solitaire. But think about what's on there now. I mean, you could really distract yourself quite easily. So in this second draft, after I've grinded it out and done that sprint of the first draft, I want to print it. I want to see it. I want to read it through. I want to see where the typos are, and then I want to start rewriting, and I want to do it with this dope. These are dope pens. I'm down pencils. I'm down to like 3. They're like 20. It's one of my indulgences. Is there's like $25 a box, but they're fun, and you get to sharpen them, and you just get to feel like a writer. And that is the hipster part of feeling like writing is on a paper kind of form. So that's one of the reasons why I use the binder for the draft, and also to see my labor, because if you just delete and cut and paste, or delete and cut and paste and save as, you don't see the lines, you don't see the strike throughs, you don't see where you have but twice or and twice, or you deleted, you can't really find the accomplishment in the rewrite. So then moving into the second draft, which is essentially inputting all the manual corrections, the manual inserts, the deletions, reading it through so many times that things have to go, looking at your word count, which in this case is going to correlate with performance time, and seeing how overwritten it is, and smoothing out prose versus speech and doing it out loud and using this binder. Then I take the binder, bring it back. We start doing all the inputs into the Microsoft or into Final Draft. And then that is now the second draft. And then you tinker with that, but you're back on the computer because you've really done some heavy lifting here. You really have a second draft. And so the second draft, by the time I've shared it, which I have finally done with a deadline, self-imposed deadline, which was my birthday, was the day I was going to sort of stop tinkering. That's when you tinker with it as a digital document. You're in draft 2. So by the time you send it out, we're talking 2.5 drafts, or maybe even 3 if you really start seeing where the changes need to come. And so now, that's just a little rant about the process of draft 1 and what I'm doing. I'm not sure how far to go into plot and devices and events in the story, because obviously I want the few people that will wind up watching this, I don't want to burn out story that hopefully an audience will someday get to see. And the idea is I'm just sort of using the digital world to talk about it, to flex about it, to stretch about it, and kind of work this analog digital hybrid of, it's going to be a piece of theater soon, and it's going to force me to make, if anyone watches this stuff, me accountable to this desk session. And I'm going to start putting them up on YouTube, and probably doing some ancillary clips for reels, etc., etc. But I'm rambling. I hope I'm making some sense. And get at me if you got any questions, or have some cool ideas about how to take this one-man show to the next phase, which I think is going to be, reading it out loud, workshopping it, putting it on its feet, starting to memorize it, getting feedback, and then eventually start performing it, and being able to make those killer cuts toward the end, and maybe add stuff, and maybe also being willing for it to change, because right now I'm writing a piece that has a lot of memory and a lot of flashing back and a lot of thematic stuff that I hope to get across. My recent discovery of where I want to go with storytelling, and maybe always have, is, without it being corny or hokey or Pollyanna, I do lean into life-affirming material. I do wish to have a thrust of momentum going out the door, or when you close the last page, or when when I say goodnight on stage. I want that. I am a rah-rah kind of guy. I always have been. So those are matters of taste that, are to be discussed another time. But for the sake of this one, and right now the title, which I haven't laid on you, is Carl D's Last Shot. So you got a lot of self-referential. You got me calling myself Carl D a lot in the third person, but Carl D's Last Shot. And the ironic title of that is, as performers, as comedians, as actors, as people aging in a career in the arts without the success they've so craved, I've given myself a lot of anxiety and suffered needlessly, because even when I was in my 20s, I thought that this is my last shot. I got to make this count. And it just put such a vice of pressure on things. It made me less open, less fluid, less ready to share, honestly, and less willing to shed my fears, because everything was the goddamn, had to be the thing to put me on the next level. It was always about, when this is going to help me make it. When I wrote my play, this was going to make me like John Leguizamo. This is going to make me, I'm going to be a writer and an actor, and I'm going to, use it to make myself castable, and the same with stand up. Oh, I gotta get I gotta get Montreal. And then those sets didn't go well because the pressure was so intense, and because it was going to save me, it was going to be and everything was like my last shot. So just an overarching theme right now, we're calling the one-man show Carl D's Last Shot, and that will and can and probably will change. I'll go into a little bit of, like, with books later on. With my book, my brother helped me with, he also wrote a book. My sister wrote a book, and some of the most fun stuff, it's like naming a band, is messing around with titles. Titles is a whole, maybe we'll do a whole desk session on titles, naming, especially in the digital age, because your book, movie, screenplay, one-man show, your podcast, the title is going to be the way people get there. And it's fun as fuck, and it's not so serious. And I can change it from The Last Shot to Chewing Furniture, which was an early name for my book. I called my book The Drama King, and it was not the most original title, but it was memorable. My last name's a little bit of a mouthful, so your titles tend to need to be, a little catchier. And my play in New York was called Knee Deep, which was very cool title. It popped on advertising and on the flyers. And The Last Shot, I think that might be, that has a lot cooking in there. Even could be a sports reference. It could be, life or death. There's a lot in that Last Shot. And then Carl D's Last Shot, there's some thematic tie-ins. And the other thing about The Drama King was, when I did social media with it, I traveled with the book. I had the one sample copy of it, and I had the good fortune of being in Italy. So everywhere we went in Italy, because the title was The Drama King, then it was a personification that the Drama King is in Venice. The Drama King is in, and you could put the book in front of statues. And I had friends go to Hawaii, and the Drama King in Hawaii, and the Drama King, a buddy of mine went to Oaxaca in Mexico, the Drama King in Oaxaca. I had a buddy who was from Pittsburgh. He went back to my old university, Carnegie Mellon, the Drama King at Carnegie Mellon, things like that. So now I'm already ranting into an episode about titles, but it's the fun stuff, and this is the rambling stuff. And I'm not sure how long I've been going on this. I'm sure it'll need some editing, but I think this is going to be low fidelity, lo-fi. Just we're going about it this way until I figure out how to do stuff behind me and start teleprompter. But right now, this stuff's coming off the dome, and I'm going to kind of keep it simple, because the means of production and overdoing the means of production is a great way to make yourself procrastinate. And this is the first one, so they will improve. And that is a lesson also about any endeavor in the arts, or in any endeavor, really, sports, exercise. All this stuff is sort of interconnected. And thanks for letting me take you in into my my ramble. and hopefully we can find a way to get to this finish line together. And I'll keep you posted. So thanks again. This is Carl D's Desk Sessions. I'm Carl DeGregorio, and many, many thanks if you put your eyeballs on this. Peace.